We'll continue Ois Gimel. So the Rebbe brought down the two Taichin by Shmini Limiluyim. We talk about Shmini, the way it's higher than the other 7 days. Shmini is higher. And also that it goes lower into Malchus. Uh, Higher meaning in Chochmah, the eighth is Chochmah, which is higher than the seven. And lower means it's a malchus, which is lower than the seven. L'chayra, we should say the same thing when we talk about the 8 days of Hanukkah, about Zois Hanukkah. That Hanukkah also has these two inyonim, that it's also higher and lower. The idea of Oz, the either the Aleph is Reichav Allah Zayin, which means that the eighth, the number one, is higher than the seven, or that it's lower. But in the Maimorim, the Rebbe brings out, we're only talking about Zois Chanukah, how the eighth day is lower. So it seems like in Chanukah, it's only about the level going down to Malchus, not so much eighth day that is higher, but we're talking about in Shmini Limeluyim, we explained the reason it goes lower, it is because it comes from higher. But over here, we're saying that it is the Chatchila only going down lower. We don't talk so much about Shmini that it's higher. And this is what Rebbe is going to explain. Gimel. So this will be understood based on what is known, the Bemailas Hamaisa, Kamo Inyonim, that there is several ideas about what is the advantage, what's the greatness of action. Action corresponds to Malchus. The Rebbe says in the bracket, the koyach hamaisa sheba'odom, the power of action which a person has, the levush hamaisa, the neshama does, brings in maisa, in action. This power of maisa by a person is koyach achitachtin, that is the lowest power of the soul, is the power of maisa, who dumas sfiras hamalchus, and that's why this is similar to the sfiras hamalchus. So there is many common yonim. There are several ideas with regards to the advantage of maisa. So number one, Maisa, because it's the lowest, and when you raise something, a structure, you use a lift called a lever over here. You have to, if you want to get the entire structure, you have to start with the bottom. If you will start in the middle, you'll only get those beams or those koiris that is in the middle of the house. You won't get the bottom. So Maisa, because it's the lowest, that elevates the whole structure. So so one idea is Shalidei Hamaisa Davke Nasa Aliyah B'chol Koiches Hanefesh, that it's specifically through Maisa that brings about an elevation in all of the powers of the soul. וכידוע המשול על זה מכלי ההגבוה הנקרא liver. As the example given for this, on this, the mashal of this is from a raising, a tool that raises, which is called a lift, a liver. It's called a liver. Shal yidei shemamidim oisoi tachas kol hadova sherotzim lahagbia. When you place it underneath the entire matter that you're trying to raise, oz davke yugba kol hadovar. Only then the entire item that you're raising is going to be raised. You have to put it all the ways at the bottom. The kasha magbihim as adover me'emtze isoy. When you will raise the item from its middle, Azai hachelek hatachten shaboy yishoyer lamata. So then the lower part of the item you're raising is going to bring the bottom, because it's only raising it from the place where the lever, where the lift is going to take it. For example, hagbohas bayis, raising a house, b'chdei shekol habayis yukbal lemaylo. If in order for the entire house to be raised above, udavke al yidei shemagbihim hakoida hatachtoina shel habayis. That's specifically when you raise the bottom beam of the house, you're going to raise the entire house. Ukeshemagbihim esak etzolim le'emtso isom, when you raise the walls from their middle, hakoides hatachtoines nishoris lamata. So then the bottom beams, I guess they're talking about the koides, they're not standing up. You place them one laying flat on the other. So if you raise the the middle one, the bottom beams will be remaining below. You only raise it from that point and on. So in order to raise the whole building, the whole house, you have to go underneath the bottom of the beams. And the Rebbe adds now that it's not the pshat that you only will leave behind the bottom part that you didn't raise, but you're actually missing out on the whole house. It's one house. So if you only raise the top and you didn't raise the bottom, the whole house isn't really fully raised. Via Shloimar, the Rebbe adds. The kivon shekol hakoiris heim shel bayis echod, since all these beams belong to one house, they're part of a house. Lochein, and therefore, when the lower beam remains below, gam hahagboa v'ha'aliyah shel kodesh ha'elyona is eina b'shlemus. So also the raising and the elevation of the upper beams is not full. So basically, you haven't completely raised it if you only raise the beams from the middle and you leave part of it on the bottom. And this would apply certainly so. B'hanimshol. Malachas kama b'hanimshol b'koiches hanefesh. So how much more so if you leave something behind? When we talk about, this is talking about the structure, this one house that would be considered also, in a sense, leaving behind. And So, and the second idea, so the first point was that in order to raise the whole building, in order to raise all the koiches hanefesh, you have to start from the mice. And then there's another idea over here. Shal yidei hamaise ha'aliyah v'hagbo shekoiches elyonim hi lemokim gavoya yosef. Through meiser, through meiser, it's not only that you can elevate everything, but you elevate it to a place, a higher place than before, than you could with the koiches themselves. The maisa, through the maisa, it raises everything. Not only that it will raise everything, but it will raise everything to a higher place. Ukehamoshel, that would be like the example, the parable, the kaf meznaim. If you have a scale, sheshoklin bekaf echas, that you weigh on one side, benoisni masa bekaf hashniya, and then you put the load on the second spoon, or the second on the scale on the other side. Shekol shahakaf shebo shoyklim yeredes lamata yoser, so that the more that side which you weigh, you want to see the way, the more it goes down, Hagbos Hamaz Shebekaf Hashniya, the load raised on the other side, he Lamaila Yosef, is to a higher place. So through Maisa, the whole thing is raised just like by the scale, in which the more the other side goes down into the Maisa, it raises everything higher. And so that's the advantage of Maisa. Maisa encompasses everything and the raises it higher. Why is it that Maisa has this power to be at this level, to raise everything and make it higher? V'hinei dalet. Zeh shal yidei hamaisa davke nasa shleimes haliyah d'chol hakoiches. This, that specifically through Maisa brings about the wholesomeness in all of the powers. It is because the root of mice is higher than all the koiches, and that's why you can bring all of the koiches to elevate them and bring them even higher. It's the mice, because mice is rooted higher than kol koiches. And there's two ideas why we're saying that Maisa is higher than all the koiches. The two ideas. One is, in order for things to come down to Maisa, the upper koiches to come down in Maisa, it has to come from a higher place, because the koiches themselves cannot come down. They're limited to their place, and they cannot come down to Maisa. So you need the source from a higher place to push down, so to speak, the koiches, seichel, and the other koiches into the maisa. And number two, that maisa be'etzem is deeper in the soul, in the etzem hanefesh, because it is distant from the soul. It's not part of the gilum. Let's look inside. Dalit. V'hinei zeh shal yidei hamaisa davke nasa shleimus aliyah. The cholakoiches, this that we're saying, that is specifically through action, that the maisa that brings the wholesome aliyah of all the koiches, is because the root of action is higher than koiches. Shnei yonim is that there are two ideas. Number one, shaham shocha b'maisa, to bring down, to draw down, extend it into maisa. The fact that the intellect and the emotions are extended into Maisa, that is rooted in the soul, which is higher than the koiches. For the hamshacha to come down, it's because it is rooted higher than the koiches. The intellect and the emotions on their own, Hey, Mugbolim, they're limited. They don't have the ability to descend so low, and to dress up in action. And this that they do possible, it is possible for them to descend and dress up in mice, although on their own they're mugbal. While is through the fact that within the seichel and midas extends from the higher, from the nefesh itself. The nefesh finds itself, it's in all powers and all limbs equally. So when from the etzem nefesh it comes down into the seichel and midas, it can come down even to mice. That's number one. So that is because from the perspective that from the koiches can come down to in order for them to be nimshach to maise, they has to come from because of they get from the etzem nefesh. But the other point is v'shashurish the koyach hamaisa atzmai, and just not just to come down from the seichel midas into maise, but maise on itself by itself. Ulemailom hashurish the chol hakoiches is higher than the root of all the koiches. Because there's a difference. All the koiches are close to the nefesh. But the koyach ha'maise, who koyach nivdal, the power of maise is a separated koyach. Who lifisha ha'shoirish, the chol ha'koiches, who behagiluyim da ha'nefesh, because the root of all the koiches is in revelation, where the nefesh reveals itself. It's the part of the nefesh that the nefesh reveals itself in the koiches, and that's where all the koiches, and that's why they're close to the nefesh. But vashoidish, the koich hamai, but that's in the giluyim of the nefesh. But vashoidish, the koich hamaisa, who be'etzem nefesh, the root of the koich hamaisa is in the essence of the nefesh. So this explains, the Rebbe explained now, that Maise brings down from the Etzem HaNefesh in order for the Koiches Midas to become down, Seichel Midas to come down into Maise. And in essence, Maise is rooted in the Etzem HaNefesh versus the Koiches that are rooted in the Giluyim of the Nefesh. And therefore, Maise is high. So this is the way it's in the nefesh. And now we're going to discuss this. The similar is in Avodas Hashem. Hey, just as when we talk about the powers of the soul, hashoirish the koyach hamaisa, ulemailo b'shoirish kol hakoyches, the root of the power of action is higher than the root of all the koyches. Al derech zeh, in the service of Hashem, the advantage of Maisa is higher than serving the Eibishter with the intellect, the emotion. There is a greater advantage of Maisa. That the main advantage in the service of Hashem is in action. We know Talmud Gadol, the Zeshe Talmud Gadol, that the Talmud is great. Hurak Achshav. Now, not in the future to come, right now is Talmud Gadol. But in the future to come, Yemaisa Gadol. In the future, La'asid Lavei, over there will be, Maisa will be greater. So ultimately, in the future, which is the ultimate wholesomeness in the future, we see Maisa Gadol. And even the Rebbe says now, the reason, Begam Achshav, also now she Talmud Gadol. Hatam lozeh, ulefish Talmud mevil demais. Over here also, why is Talmud Gadol? Because Talmud brings to action. The mezem muchaf. So in this it's evident. So iker hu hamaisa, that the main thing is the maisa. V'zeh shelo osid love yedavke yemaisa Gadolu. So how come we're saying that in the future Maisa will be Gadol? If we're saying that even now the Emerson Talmud's greatness is also because it leads to Maisa. So Maisa is Gadol. So why are we saying that La'osid Love now Talmud is Gadol? Maisa Gadol. Talmud because there's two advantages of Maisa over Talmud, generally speaking, which is Dugmas Shnei Hinyon del Il Siv Daled Ba'Maila the Koyach HaMaisa Legabe Shara Koyachas, which is similar to the two ideas that we spoke about in the previous Sif and Sif Daled, when we talked about there's an advantage of Maisa over other koiches. So similarly, there is an advantage in Avodas Hashem with Maisa over Talmud. Number one, the fact that Maisa oirer umamshich as a oir hablikvul shalamaylo meislapshus bechochm, which is Talmud. The fact that Maisa arouses, wakes up, and draws down the light of the Blikvul, which is higher than Chochmah. Said before that through Maisa, the Maisa brings down from the Nefesh, which is higher than the Koiches HaGeluyim, it brings down from a higher place. Same thing is when an action brings down from a higher place than Chochmah, than Slapshus b'Chochmah. Shalochein ha'amshochesh al yidei ha'maisa hilamato yeser. That is the amshocha that comes through action, brings it down even lower, comes down lower because it comes from a higher place. The chokhmah can only is limited on its own. You have to bring down from a higher place in order to bring it down lower. And the number two, the fact that Maisa itself reaches in the level of the Helem Ha'atzmi, in the Helem of the essence, which is higher than Bligvul. So one, Maisa is Mamshich Bligvul, and then two, it reaches into Helem Ha'atzmi. So the Rebbe is going to explain now like this, the two, why is it now Talmud Gadol? Yesh Loimar. So we can say, the Mailas HaMaisa Achshov, that the advantage of Maisa now, Shagam Achshov Ikeru HaMaisa, now we're saying also Maisa is the main. And the greatness of Talmud is because it leads you to Maisa, so it's still Maisa. Because now we're talking about through Maisa, you bring down the level of Ligvul, which is a Shleimus Binyan Hagiluim. That is within the aspect of revelation of Giluyim, the Shleimus is to bring the Eir HaBligvul. So that's the Maila now of Talmud Shemei Lidei Maisa that it brings in Shleimus HaGiluyim. Zehu Godel Talmud Shemei Lidei Maisa. And that's why we're saying that the greatness of Talmud that it brings to Maisa, Shemaila Zude Maisa Nichleles Bagadlus the Talmud. This advantage of Maisa is included. This is part of greatness of Talmud. The Talmud is so great that it comes down to the Maisa because this is the Shleimus and the Giluyim, so it's an advantage. So there's still Maisa over here. So, and the reason why we're saying La'asid Love will be because of a deer will reach the Helem Ha'atzmi. The Talmud, the fact that Talmud can bring to Maisa, that means it's a greatness in Talmud. That it comes down Bilmato, who are Gadlus the Talmud. That's the greatness of Talmud, that it can come down Lamato. Because that in the Talmud has been extended the light of the infinite. That's how the Talmud extended below and brought to Maisa is because it was infused by the Gadlus, by the Giluyim, by the Eir HaBligvul. And that's why it comes down. So that's the Maila of Maisa, but it's a Maila in the Talmud that brings to the Maisa. But the fact that in the future over there we say Maisa will be great, over there is the advantage of Maisa itself, not because it can go down lower, but it's Maisa, the greatness, Shemagia behelim ha'atzmi, that reaches in the helam ha'atzmi, in the higher level, Shalamayla Magiluyim, which is higher than the revelation. So the Rebbe explains the two milas of Maisa. Maisa la'osid love will reach into helam ha'atzmi. And the mile of Maisa now is that the Talmud comes down to the Maisa that you mapshe from Eira Bligvul. That's a shlemus in Giluyim. In Le'osid Lava, you'll get the mile of Maisa itself that it reaches into Helam Ha'atzmi. But so, what is in Chanukah? What it took place in Chanukah? By Hina you do a vav. You do sheba Chanukah. La'achrei has gabrus ha'choshech da'yivonim. After the darkness of the Greek was strengthened, we had to deal with the Greeks in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Hoysam shoches nailis. After the overpowering of the darkness of the Yevonim, the miracle of Hanukkah, we overcame the darkness of the Yevonim. Hoysam shocha nailis yoser. So then there was a higher drawn down from a higher level from that which extended in the Beis Hamikdash beforehand. The legabe hahamshocha shahoyso lifnei, and that's why there was able to be Yevonim, because it wasn't so powerful. What the hamshocha that was in the Beis Hamikdash before Chanukah, it was possible to be the tigboides, these gabrus of the Choshech of the Yevonim. So again, the taich before is also like this, like I said in the beginning. After they overpowered, you got a higher hamshocha. The lagabe hamshocha shoyso lifnei zeh, relative to what was before. It was possible in the hamshocha that the darkness of the Yevonim should be overpowering. The hamshocha the Chanukah. But when after Chanukah, over there you get from the higher level of Havaya Shalamaylam Ishtalshalus, which is higher than Ishtalshalus, and over there you overpower the Greeks. Then the Erzeh Meir Gam Es Sachoshech, the higher level from Havaya Lile'elo that came about after Chanukah, that can even illuminate the darkness. The adab that when he gets from the level of Havaya is that illuminates the darkness. Meir, over there, the darkness itself begins to shine. So it's no longer his gabrus hachoshech. There's no more choshech. The choshech starts like bedugmas, similar hagilud losid, as in will be in losid, the choshech itself will begin to light. So now, since that's his gabrus after Chanukah. So based on this, we can explain the difference between the 8th day of Chanukah, which we talk basically is about the level of Malchus, the lower, and the 8th day of Miluim, which we talk about both the 8th is lower and also the 8th is higher. The Shmini Miluim hu b'Malchus. The fact that part that Shmini Miluim is a Malchus, Shmini Shalamato Mishiva, which would be 8th below 7, That is the first level, that the Hamshacha above you can bring down all the ways to Malchus. Shmini the Chanukah. So that is by Shmini leMeluyim in Malchus. Shmini the Chanukah be Malchus. But when we say Shmini of Chanukah Malchus, who shall yidei haMshacha the Chanukah, that through the Hamshacha the Vayid the Leila took place in Chanukah, Nasa Aliyah be Malchus Atzmo. Then Malchus itself becomes the elevation in Malchus in of its own, not only to be mamshich from a higher place down to a lower place, all the ways to Malchus, but that Malchus itself in Helam Atzma became, you have the Aliyah in that. That takes place by the Shmini of Chanukah. And that's why Bezehu, and that's why Shebahadrushim Shemevairim. Inyan Shmoines Yimei HaMiluyim, those Maimorim that explain the 8 days of Miluyim, Muvoim Shnei HaPirushim. They bring down the both, because the Shmini Shulam Mailo Mishiva, Shmini is higher than Vishulam Mato Mishiva, and that is below Shiva because it gets one connected to the other because it comes down Bedrusha now. But in the previous Maimer, our Maimer, over here, when we talk about the 8th of Chanukah, maybe Raka Pirush Shmini Ulamata Mishiva, it only brings down the Shmini is lower than the Shiva. Kizeh Shaham Shoche Milmaila Nimshechas Gam Lemata, for the perspective. The first idea that the Hamshacha above can be drawn down also below to the Shmini leMeluyim, to Malchus, umitzad hamayla the Shoresh Hamshacha. That's because of the advantage that where it comes from, the root of Hamshacha comes from a higher place, who can go down lower. That's a derech mailas ha'maisa achshav. That's similar to the maisa now, before la'osid lovei. Now that the reason we have the Maila in Maisa because we can be mamshech from the higher level, which is the Shemini Shalamailo. That's why it's Talmud Godel. It's still the Talmud Godel that Shemini Shalamailo Mishiva infuses the Shemini which is below Suras HaMalchus. But on the other hand, but when we talk about the Shmini of Chanukah in Malchus, that the Mata itself should be refined and elevated. Shmini the Chanukah, who mehelem ha'atzmi shalamaylo misheirish hagilui. That comes from the helem ha'atzmi, which is higher than the root of gilui. It's in a whole different level. Al derech Maisa Gotl she'yilos love. That's similar to the Maisa Gotl be in the future. Over there is going to be the Maisa mitzad atzmai because it reaches into Helm Atzmai. V'lochein hadgosha shel yom hashmini de Chanukah, and that's why the emphasis of the 8th day of Chanukah is sheyu b'malchus. That is the Malchus. Lochein nikra. That's why we call b'shem Zeus Chanukah. Just Zeus, the level of Zeus is feminine level Malchus. So Inyan, the Zichu Chamata, the idea of the refinement of the Mata Zadatzma. So the Rebbe ties in these two ideas in Godel Talmud Shmeivel de Maisa, the Milas of Maisa, that it's Mamshach Deir Abligvul, and the Laos Love Maisa is Godel because the Maisa itself, the way it's in the Nefesh and the way it's in Avedus Hashem, also in the idea of Chanukah, that the Malchus by the Shmini leMeluyim is the greatness of the higher level of Shmini that can come down, brings it down all the ways to the lower level of Shmini, as opposed to the Malchus of Chanukah, that it's Mezachich the Mata that it reaches to the Helam Ha'atzmi. Zayin. V'hinei, Inyan Zeh, Shalo Osid Love a year, Maisa Godel. This idea that in the future, Maisa is great, Nizgala Kichole in Yonim, the Teres HaChasidus, the Teres HaCharenim Davke. That is, as all matters of Chasidus has been revealed in the later generations that the Maisa is greater. As Alter Rebbe, the Tanya brings down that now is Maisa greater. Vagam shegilu lonu zeh. And the reason we are told that Maisa is greater, that the action, the Maisa is greater, is even though now it's still the level of Talmud Gadol. So why are we saying Maisa Gadol? Because all these revelations of the future hinge on our actions and our avodah now. And the fact that the Maisa will take be Gadol mitzad atzmei in the highest level, that is through the effort and the alacrity or diligently in Maisa now. The daughter, the Ikvisa, the Mashiach, and that's why the generations of the heels of Mashiach, Gilu Shela Osid Lava Yiyu Maisa Gadol. That's why they revealed that in the future to come, Maisa will be greater. We need to know it now in order to encourage, through knowing that this is in the future now, the effort and the zirus in Maisa to do action. That's will bring about in the future that the Maisa will be Gadol. But we are told about it now, not because we have to wait till the Osid Love. We have to prepare now for the Osid Love. Since in the future to come, Maisa will be greater. How they move on. It's understood. Shakol Yonim the Gula Hasida. So all matters of the future redemption and the redemption itself, for sure, needs to be Maisa. Tzrichim liyas b'Maisa lepoil need to be in actual action. Because man shagula loyeshna daim bepoil, as long as the redemption is not here actually, chosar the main thing is lacking. If we don't have the geula in Maisa. Kisipur Hayedua that Tzemach Tzedek v'Admur Maharash, as the known story of the Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbe Maharash, Sheksh'omer Tzemach Tzedek b'negei l'hakeitz shehoya al shnas tofrish ches. When the Tzemach Tzedek said about there was a kates, an end of the Golus that was to take place in the year tofrish ches. So he said that it was fulfilled. Yes, the kates took a place. That because that's when the Likutei Torah came out. Ona Admur Maharash. So the Maharash, the Rebbe Maharash answered, Mendav Hob Mashiach Lamata Masora Tvachim. We need Mashiach below 10 Tvachim. We need him here in action. So the Rebbe explains like this. The fact that Tzemach Tzedek says Likutei Torah was printed, that's the case. Who? So how is that the case? That's how we bring down our master, which is the King Mashiach. And since the Pnimis HaTorah, the wellsprings, is not limited by time, it's beyond, it's above the limitation of time, how they move on, so it's understood, so when they're spreading the wellsprings, which is the cause for the master to come, for Mashiach to come, we immediately have also the consequent osimar, we actually have Mashiach here because time isn't a limitation. So we have Mashiach because we have the Mayonis. The Binyonim Shehem Begeder Zman, because when we talk about matters which are defined in the definitions of time, Hasiba v'Hamisuba, the cause and the effect, and Ba'ifin the Gdim of Icher is in a way of earlier and later. So you have the cause and then you have the effect. Shahamisuba of Mishtalshul Nasiba, the effect evolves from the cause. But B'hamshochazu, Shahamisuba Nimshach Umishtalshul Nasiba, when in that kind of Hamshocha that the consequence extends and evolves from the cause, So over there, actually is kamoifanim, so it can take time. That it should come down in a way, as the pasuk said, very quickly. His words, it comes right away. In a way that it's quick, in a timely way. But when we're talking about matters which are higher than the boundaries of time, and if it doesn't fit, it doesn't apply, there can't be an interruption between the cause and the effect. When there is the cause, we immediately also have the mesuba. But this idea just like the cause, which is the spreading of the well springs, and the result, so they are beyond time. Vashleim is the fotzes of Mayonos would be Mashiach, but the wholesomeness of spreading the Mayonis and the coming of Mashiach is not to be beyond time. That it should be in Zman and Mokim, like the Rebbe Marash said. And means in simple, literally. So that through our work and our service in spreading the well springs to the outside, the mice and the poil, through this osimar, the master will come Mashiach, the Malka Mashiach, which is the King Mashiach, the mice and the poil actually. Since this, that we need to anticipate, wait for the coming of Mashiach. In addition, to believe in the coming of Mashiach. That we have to anticipate, wait for it. Halacha, that's a law, the Yonash halacha. The idea when you say halacha, to fulfill this matter as it's simply, literally, in actually, so therefore, with the agreement of the entire community, we want Mashiach now, very speedily in our days.